Welcome back. In part one, Dr. Libby helped us connect the dots between iron deficiency and things like fatigue, anxiety, and the real reason women feel so depleted. If you haven't listened to that yet, you need to go back and start there, as it sets the stage for everything we're about to dive into right now. In this second half, we explored the emotional patterns behind burnout, from rushing women's syndrome to the pressure to be everything to everyone. I hope you enjoy this episode. You haven't just written this book. Am I right in saying you've written 14 books?
Yes.
That's like a lot of books, Libby.
I'm a geek. How lucky I get to turn my phone off, disappear and write. How
great,
fun.
Though, rushing women's syndrome is something that did you coin that term? And now everyone uses it.
Do they?
Go you. The guest before you today referred to rushing women's syndrome as well. And I was like, I didn't say it then, but I'm like, well, Libby's in next. So can we talk a little bit about what specifically that book? I know you've written 14. We could be here for a long time and I wouldn't get tired of talking to you.
Me either.
Why did you write that book? What inspired you? What were you seeing with women that inspired you to sit down and coin that term?
So, yeah, it's not a medical condition, obviously. It was just the name I gave my book, and it was based on my observations of my female clients at the time. And I wrote it, this actually is astonishing, I wrote it in 2011, which feels like 5 minutes ago to me, but apparently that's about 14 years ago. 1992 feels like 5 minutes ago as well. So
yes.
Anyway, I was very naive. I thought it was a glitch in the matrix. I thought, it's just, what's happening right now. Everyone's just sped up. People were bursting into where I saw patients, they'd burst into the office in a hurry and really distressed. And I used to think things had gone dramatically wrong, but it was often they'd tried to cram so much into their morning and then they ran late and couldn't get a car park. And there was this I can just simply describe it as a heightened state. And it was very new. People hadn't really behaved like that before. The odd one, but it was not consistent and it was happening consistently. And I was seeing, obviously people aren't going to see people like you and I if they feel fabulous. They come because they've got digestive system problems or reproductive system challenges or headaches or they can't sleep or whatever, all sorts of things.
Yes.
So I'm very aware, when I was still seeing patients, I was seeing a biased group of the population. It was like an escalation in how intense the gut problems were, the period problems were, more and more challenges with thyroids. So I was just seeing this almost like what I thought was a perfect storm. And like you, I ask why. I want to get to the heart of absolutely everything. And I could see that essentially the constant relentless production of stress hormones, because it was communicating a lack of safety to this person's body, which wasn't the truth. And I think we need to find out ways to communicate the truth to our body. But it was essentially saying you're not safe. And so the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, was saying to the pituitary, honey, tell all of the glands that you're responsible for that we're not safe here. And everyone was in kind of overdrive. And then there were obviously consequences to that. So rushing woman syndrome was really the description of the cluster of symptoms that wasn't a disease, but it was what living with the persistent, constant, relentless production of stress hormones was doing to us. My work has 3 pillars: biochemical, nutritional, and emotional, or you could say mindset. And in that third pillar, the part in the book where I talk about sort of our mindset, we stress because we care. It comes from a really beautiful place. If you didn't care, you wouldn't stress. But beyond the caring, if you sort of peel the layers back, we can also see that we care what other people think. And so I described a concept that I called forward words. And I used to sometimes say to my patients, it's as if you've walked through the door with this word on your forehead, and it's a trait, a behavioural trait that you really want other people to see in you. So I get people to do that exercise. How do you need others to see you, and name those traits? And obviously the way you want your mother to see you might be different from how you want a colleague to see you. So you might need a few different lists. But how do you need people to see you? And for rushing women, their reply was, I need to be seen as kind, thoughtful, selfless. So they were already those things, but they were prepared to sacrifice their own health to demonstrate to others that they were those things. Other people will say, I need to be seen as competent, hardworking, efficient, dedicated, loyal. And so it doesn't matter what our traits are that we want others to see. We have them and they're unique to us, but you want to know what yours are. So then the next time you're stressed, pause and consider, am I perceiving someone is seeing me in the opposite way to my forward words? And most of the time, the answer will be yes. And I ran some focus groups before I wrote The Invisible Load, which was my 2019 book. And for the youngest group, they were aged 18 to 25. By far and away, their top two stresses were body image and social media. And when I share that with older audiences, they don't understand how social media can be a stress because they use it to catch up with their friends who live in England, or I watch wombat videos. I think wombats are hilarious. So it's like entertainment. So how is that stressful? It's not. Right. But for younger people, it's a mechanism through which they seek approval. Not all, I'm generalising, but some of them do.
Definitely how they're seen and how they show up.
Whereas for the 35 to 55-year-old age group, it wasn't the top one, but a common stress was running late. Yeah, sure, we might be running late because we're going to a conference and we don't want to miss the first speaker, but we often run late. We get stressed about running late because we're worried what the person who's going to be on the receiving end of our running late is going to think of us.
Right.
And so the difference with getting to the heart of that is, firstly, you can see that you're not actually stressed in these examples. You're not actually stressed. You're worried what someone thinks of you. And that can change then how you communicate. If you run late for a meeting and you've sat in traffic and thought, I am worried that my boss or my colleague is going to see me as inefficient or lazy or not punctual, whatever it is.
Disorganised
You could grab them at the end of the meeting and say, hey, look, sorry I was late. All sorts of chaos broke out at home this morning. I do my best to not let that interfere with my work. It's important to me that you know that I care very much about my job and I do my best to be a hard worker and efficient. What are they going to say to you? Oh, you're fired. No, they'll be like, thank you for being so vulnerable. And we get the connection we seek with others when we are vulnerable like that. And also think about what the rest of that day is going to look like. You've spoken what you were concerned about. So now you can just go about your day in your ordinary, hardworking, efficient way. You don't go into overdrive trying to prove to those people that you are that. Because when we go into that overdrive, we go home after a day like that and say, it was really stressful today, when it wasn't. We did it to ourselves. That's a long answer to your question. But
that's great. That's great.
That's what that was about. And I was wrong. It wasn't a glitch in the matrix. It's only sped up since rushing woman syndrome in 2011.
I mean, I know when I first started in clinic and I was seeing all the fertility issues that we were seeing, I started asking what is happening, why. Now, this is 20 years ago. It was not the same. So even for someone that's listening now, it's possibly difficult to understand. No one was asking why. When I pulled everything away, it was modern lifestyle, not just chemical exposure and things that had made their way into our bodies, but it was, burning the candle at both ends, things that we now know logically are stressful, but the flow-on effect that was having to women's fertility and menstrual cycles specifically, and now we still see it now, but I do think there's more conversation around it, was crazy. And then it never occurred to me. I was like, why is this happening? So I set about, really getting into it. And I was like, oh, it's just modern lifestyle. Crazy. I would say the first step is being able to recognize the feeling.
Yes.
Because then you can actually, I say to patients, I can't get you to do something if you're not conscious about how you're feeling about something. So to your point, if someone's feeling like they've let someone down, or it's a stress, right? They're feeling stressed, but if they look at the reason why, then they can actually do something. They can have that conversation, or maybe it's just a conversation you have to have with yourself.
Exactly.
Right? And then you can reframe it. And then the other question I have is, the flow-on effect of not addressing that just keeps on showing up everywhere, right?
It does. But then I feel that we just blame it on modern life, and then we just say, well, it's just how life is now. And I'm trying to help people pierce that. And there's very real and genuine stress going on in the world. There's very real and genuine stress going on in people's lives. But there's also a huge amount of stress we create for ourselves because of how we think. And that's the part we can change. So when I talk about stress like this, that's what I'm talking about, the stuff we do to ourselves. And so instead of just labeling it as stress, I love it when people get curious about what leads them as an individual to produce stress hormones in the first place. And that's why something like that forward word technique can be really helpful, because you'd stop seeing it as, oh, I'm just stressed. No, I'm worried what that person thinks, or I've been burning the candle at both ends. I need to change that. But then I take it, why are you doing that? What are you, because we're essentially saying I'm prepared to sacrifice my health in the service of others, but it's kind of not service when we do that. It's servitude because we can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
So it's and that conversation has shifted, I think, a bit.
I agree. That generation, though, I don't know what that is, like 30, 45, maybe even older, there's that real service to others that really runs strong still.
Yeah.
And then if that's what you've seen your mother do,
yes,
you do, like it's very hard to disconnect from that. I shared the other day on social media, I had 24 hours and I literally was like facial massage, like all of the things. And I was like, once upon a time, I would have been like, I'm not sharing that. People will judge. And I was like, actually, if I don't do those things and have 24 hours to reset, I'm good for no one. I'm responsible for people's livelihood. I have a team of, 12 people I have to pay wages for.
Yeah.
I have to show up for patients. I have to show up for my family. Like if I don't do these things, then I'm actually, it's a disservice to everybody.
Yes.
And really reframing that. But it takes time for us to reframe that when we've learnt and seen our mothers really sacrifice.
And I think too, when we've witnessed that, we make it part of our worth and it's the disconnect from that. I think you can really feel it in yourself when that act of service comes from a very genuine place, and we need that. The world's going to fall apart if we stop caring and stop contributing. But I think we can also feel it when we're doing it out of obligation, and that's that we often do that because we've connected our worth to that's what we perceive as service or being selfless. And so it's disconnecting that and connecting it to the things that we value a lot, like it might be family or it might be lifting heavy things, because I know you're relishing that right now.
Yeah, right.
And so it's being able to perform those things that support your health now and into the future and your longevity, all of it. So it's getting some of those new sort of brain patterns, I think, firing for the version of us that's going to go into the second half of our life.
Here's the other thing I'm just thinking. When we've got 2 points in our life where our hormones are really temperamental, I would say. Puberty, where they're just finding their groove, and perimenopause, where they're coming out the other side, perimenopause, menopause. When we're in our teens, we are far more likely, we put ourselves first as teenagers, like they really do, and that's just the way they are, generally speaking, right? The stress is less likely to impact their sex hormones. By the time you're in your fertile years and things are should be a bit more robust, and you are still relatively like, oh, it's about me, but it's about sort of other people, but it's mostly about me. And then we're in our perimenopausal years and we've got the temperamental aspect of hormones, knowing that for the person listening doesn't know where I'm going with this, your sex hormones and your stress hormones pretty much play it out for each other. I'm just sitting here going, it's no wonder women are claiming perimenopause to be almost it's not an illness, but it feels like it to a lot of women when you consider all of these factors and how stress is really impacting their sex hormones, given that they're temperamental at that point in time.
So beautifully said and great insight. So I wrote Rushing Woman Syndrome when I was 35. Those women are now in perimenopause. And so the women who went from growing up without technology in their pocket to kind of having to learn how to manage that, as well as raising small humans, as well as managing a livelihood and a household, they're the ones now in perimenopause, and no other generation has gone into perimenopause with that history. I think too, though, it's so important to, like you, Nat, I want to get to the heart of everything, and there's this tendency right now that for any new symptom that anyone between about the ages of 38 and 55 experience, there's this tendency to just blame it all on perimenopause. And when we say that, I think we're essentially saying it's down to our changing hormones. And of course, that can contribute to how we feel and function. We've just talked about how that can do that. But my worry is that all sorts of other things get missed. And if perimenopausal, what we might experience through those years is purely down to changing sex hormones, everyone would suffer and they don't. There's a lot of benefit to the conversations we're now having around perimenopause. I think way more women get the help and the support that they need. There's a sense of community. There's way more learning, and women who are suffering, there's all sorts of solutions that they can then be guided to and helped with, and they get their quality of life back. One of the drawbacks, though, is that when you talk to women who are around 30 now, they're terrified of perimenopause.
I know.
All they hear is how awful it is And we're not hearing from the women who aren't suffering. Again, because I was writing a book about perimenopause that I changed tack on, I did interviews around it. And for women who had been through perimenopause and not suffered at all, no sleeplessness, no hot flushes, when I said, did you talk about it? They said no. And I said, why? They said, well, firstly, there was nothing to say.
Really need to, right?
There was literally nothing to talk about. Why would I talk about it when nothing's different? Just don't have a period anymore. For others, the suffering might have been really mild. It didn't impact on quality of life. And they didn't speak. Some of them didn't speak up because they felt guilty that they weren't suffering and some of their friends were, so they kept quiet. But the trouble with that is younger women are now really worried about it. And also I think if it was just down to changing sex hormones, I think we'd all suffer. And so that's why I'm so keen for us to way better understand our metabolic health, the health of our blood, and it's where what you just talked about, how when we go in, with puberty and there's a real focus on self, so we don't get the stress effect, but at perimenopause we do. And I think too, combining these considerations with what stress in my life can I change and what stress can't I change? And let's take baby steps to actually address the stress, and whether that's you smash coffee in the morning so you've got a big surge of adrenaline, so therefore you put yourself into a state where everything feels urgent when it's not urgent. It's few priorities and things that need your attention that you might be responsible for. But so I feel that a reframing of metabolic health parameters and ways to support women across these years would be really beneficial, rather than just thinking it's all down to hormones.
It's easier to blame hormones though, Libby. Everyone wants to blame their hormones because it's easier. And then taking responsibility, to your point, absolutely. I put a post out a few weeks ago and it basically said this. It's like we need to stop blaming our hormones when we're living a rubbish lifestyle, right? You can't. And I spend far more time addressing stress hormones than I do sex hormones.
There you go.
Right?
I'm not surprised.
That's what I do because that's what drives the imbalances. So it's very interesting. We sit here and we talk about, yes, okay, we try and influence the body to allow sex hormones to work as they should with greater balance, but that comes from addressing these other things that we're talking about. So it's good to have this conversation, I think, because too many women are just settling, but they are smashing coffee, they're not exercising, they're not eating enough protein, they're not taking care of themselves at all, putting themselves last, and then feeling like rubbish, and you've got a lot of your life left to live.
Yes.
You're only halfway potentially.
Yes.
So I spend my time doing this so that there are less symptoms, so that the transition into menopause can be one of the, did that happen and I didn't know? Like that's what I aim for. Yeah. So it's so great to have these conversations. Absolutely possible. I love it when women come in saying, I want to be proactive. I mean, I think we need to be proactive at any point in time, right?
Exactly.
But I do also think that what tends to happen is, especially in the years where you had a little bit more flexibility in your early 30s, 20s and early 30s, where it didn't really matter and you could get away with, not taking care of yourself, there is that time where things do change.
Yes.
So how do we start to talk about it the other way? How do we start to say, hey, look after yourself now so that down the track you're not going to have all of these terrible symptoms. You are going to be one step ahead. And if you do start to see some symptoms, you're going to know exactly where to steer things.
Yeah. And without judgment, it's if symptoms arise, I just see them as they're communicating and prompting people to do something differently. Eat, drink, move, think, breathe, believe or perceive, or it might be lots of those areas. But what I find is if you follow that thread, the little tap on the shoulder you get, whatever idea pops into your head, we so often don't want to hear it, but the body will eventually roar at us if we don't listen to the whisper. But what I find is that so much more changes if we act on the tap on the shoulder of you need to start lifting the heavy items. You don't know what unfolds from that. And often it's the most rewarding, eye-opening. It can change the trajectory of your life. Whatever
Right.
it is, when we trust ourselves and listen to that knowing, and I almost want to put a capital K on that word knowing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Last question for the woman that's listening and she's like, oh, this is just like overwhelming. What is one small thing that you think a woman can do on a day-to-day basis to really make that little shift to start to have more of an impact on her health as she's getting older?
Can I have two?
You can have as many as you like, really.
Know your iron status.
Yes, yes. If you're feeling anxious especially.
But, now I read Bronnie Ware, I'm sure you're familiar with this beautiful book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. So from that book, it's one of the concepts I took from that book is to let yourself have what you already have. Because when you talk to people who are dying and you ask them what they're going to miss the most in the world, they tell you the most ordinary things. Their partner's face, the feeling of their dog's fur under their fingertips gives me goosebumps, the smell of lemon, the night sky, and we have all of that right now. And so we need to let ourselves have what we already have because that's what joy is all about, and joy gives us extraordinary energy. The nervous system can't focus on two things at once. It can't do, I'm worried about that and I'm grateful for that. So when we have those moments of I'm not pursuing anything, I'm not trying to achieve anything, I'm just letting myself appreciate this extraordinary gift that I have, this extraordinary life where I can look at the night sky, more of that. And the more you start to notice that, the more it appears, and the more, instead of it just being a ritual that you initially create for yourself to whatever it is, look at the night sky, you might start to notice light change in your lounge room and it catches you unaware and you just think, that's magnificent. And so there's this pause, and your nervous system in that moment, I think, gets so much more nourishment than we could ever give words to.
Amazing. I love that. So beautiful. It's so powerful, yet we don't do it enough.
It's so simple.
It is. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here in the reels with me.
I loved it so much. Thank you for all the ways you care and everything you give to the world. You are such a joy.
Oh, thanks, Libby. Well, you're the highlight here today, not me. But thank you again. I know everyone's going to love this episode.
Thanks for having me.